The Bosnian War was a genocide which took place between 1992 and 1995 between the perpetrators who were the Serbs and Croats and the Muslim Bosniaks. In 1946, Bosnia and Herzegovina became a constituent republic of Yugoslavia, undergoing significant social, economic, and political changes under the communist government. The traditional Muslim institutions, such as Quranic schools, charitable foundations, and dervish orders, were largely abolished, but a shift in policy in the 1960s led to the recognition of Muslim as a national identity. By 1971, Muslims became the largest ethnic group in Bosnia, and by the 1991 census, they made up over 2/5 of the population, while Serbs and Croats experienced significant decline in numbers. The term Bosniak eventually replaced Muslim as the preferred name for Bosnian Muslims, reflecting a shift towards a more inclusive and distinct national identity. During the 1980s, the Yugoslav economy's rapid decline led to a widespread discontent among the population with the political system, creating a fertile ground for nationalist sentiments to take hold. By 1989, independent political parties emerged, and by 1990, multi-party elections were held in Slovenia and Croatia, paving the way for similar changes in Bosnia and Herzegovina. In December 1990, elections were held in Bosnia and Herzegovina, resulting in the formation of a tripartite coalition government with Alija Izetbegović as the joint presidency leader. However, tensions between the Bosniak and Serb communities grew, making cooperation increasingly difficult. In 1991, the Serb Democratic Party began declaring self-styled Serb autonomous regions in areas with large Serb populations, and evidence emerged of secret arms deliveries from Belgrade to Bosnian Serbs. The Serb Democratic Party eventually boycotted presidency meetings and set up a rival assembly in Banja Luka. Meanwhile, full-scale war broke out in Croatia, and talks between Croatian and Serbian leaders discussed the possibility of partitioning Bosnia and Herzegovina. The situation became increasingly precarious, with Croat communities proclaimed in northern and southwestern Bosnia in November 1991, raising concerns about the country's potential partition. When the European community recognized the independence of Croatia and Slovenia in December 1991, it invited Bosnia and Herzegovina to apply for recognition as well. In February 1992, a referendum on independence was held, although the Bosnian Serb Party obstructed voting in most Serb-populated areas, resulting in almost no Bosnian Serbs participating. Despite this, nearly 2/3 of the electorate voted for independence, with President Izetbegović officially proclaiming independence on March 3, 1992. The Bosnian conflict began shortly after, with Bosnian Serb forces attacking Sarajevo and other Bosniak majority areas. The Bosnian government army, backed by some Bosnian Croat forces, initially held the front lines, but was eventually weakened by an international arms embargo and a conflict with Bosnian Croats. The United Nations refused to intervene in the conflict, but UN troops did facilitate the delivery of humanitarian aid and later extended their role to protecting designated safe areas. However, the UN failed to protect the safe area of Srebrenica in July 1995, resulting in the massacre of over 7,000 Bosniak men. Despite several peace proposals during the war, including a failed attempt to divide Bosnia and Herzegovina into ethnic cantons, the Bosnian Serbs refused to concede any territory. In response, NATO launched airstrikes against Bosnian Serb targets, and combined with a large-scale Bosniak-Croat land offensive, led to the agreement of peace talks in Dayton. The resulting Dayton Accords established a federalized Bosnia and Herzegovina, with a Croat-Bosniak federation controlling 51% of the land and a Serb republic controlling 49%. To enforce the agreement, a 60,000-member international force was deployed. The war resulted in an estimated 100,000 deaths and over 2 million displaced people. The legacy of the conflict continues to affect Bosnia and Herzegovina today, with ongoing efforts to rebuild and reconcile the country. In the aftermath of the Bosnian War, the United Nations established the International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia in May 1993, with the goal of holding individuals accountable for their roles in the conflict. The tribunal brought charges against individuals from all ethnic and national groups involved in the war, but the majority of cases were against Serb and Bosnian Serb authorities. Slobodan Milosevic, the former Serbian president, was arrested in 2001 and charged with genocide and crimes against humanity. Despite his protests of innocence, Milosevic died in prison in 2006 before his trial could conclude. Ratko Mladic, a high-ranking Bosnian Serb military officer, went into hiding in 1997 and remained at large for over a decade before his arrest in July 2008. In March 2016, Mladic was found guilty of genocide for his role in the Srebrenica massacre, as well as 9 other counts of war crimes and crimes against humanity. Ratko Mladic was arrested by Serbian authorities in 2011 and subsequently placed on trial by the ICTY. In November 2017, he was found guilty of genocide and war crimes and sentenced to life in prison. The ICTY also concluded that the Croatian government, led by Franjo Tudjman, had pursued a criminal policy of ethnic cleansing during the war. In its final case before the expiration of its mandate, the ICTY found 6 senior Croatian officials guilty of war crimes and held them responsible for their role in the conflict. The verdict was met with defiance from Slobodan Praljak, a former Bosnian Croat leader who had been sentenced to 20 years in prison for war crimes committed during the siege of Mostar. In response to the verdict, Praljak loudly declared that he rejected the judgment and drank from a bottle of poison that he had smuggled into the courtroom. The proceedings were immediately suspended, and Praljak died shortly thereafter. The ICTY's work marked a significant step towards justice and accountability for those affected by the Bosnian War. The tribunal's findings and verdicts have helped to provide closure and recognition for the victims of the conflict, and have served as a reminder of the importance of holding individuals accountable for their actions during times of war and conflict. The war in Bosnia and Herzegovina was marked by brutal ethnic cleansing and genocide, particularly against Bosniak Muslims. The Bosnian War and genocide resulted in close to 100,000 civilians killed, over 2 million people forcibly displaced, and between 20,000 and 50,000 women systematically raped, all due to their ethnicity and religious identity. From May 1992, Bosnian Serb forces under the command of General Ratko Mladic launched a campaign of terror and persecution, targeting civilian areas of Sarajevo and other cities, killing, wounding, and inflicting terror on the population by committing heinous crimes against the women and kidnapping, torturing, and killing the men. The campaign escalated in July 1995 when Bosnian Serb forces attacked and captured the Srebrenica enclave, leading to the summary execution of over 7,000 Bosnian Muslim prisoners. The aftermath of the war revealed that over 40,000 people were missing and more than 3,000 mass graves were uncovered, with bodies still being identified using DNA techniques today. 8,372 people were killed at Srebrenica, with more than 1,000 sadly still unaccounted for. May Allah have mercy on the martyrs and reward them for their efforts, sacrifices, and may Allah grant the survivors, their families, and the martyrs' family peace and reward them all for their sacrifices.